First, I'd like to introduce our panel here. We have some very distinguished folks here that have done a lot of work in the area of innovation. So first, I'd like to introduce Nagesh Kadaba. Nagesh is with the IP Consulting Group and has spent over 25 years with UPS in a variety of positions, but mainly in managing their intellectual property area. We then have Ramesh Ratan. Ramesh is CEO of Bell & Howell, but he has also a long career at Pitney Bowes. Next we have Jay Emmett, who's Senior Vice President of Open Market. And last we have, but certainly not least, we have Shay Felix, who's Senior Global Product Manager, Marketing Manager at Endicia. So, okay. So, John mentioned that I was, or am, his partner in founding Aversa Major, but along the way, both John and I have moved in and out of various opportunities and worked within the logistics and supply chain world. And right now I am working with a company called Grand Canal Solutions. And it's interesting that this morning's conversation, we were talking about understanding what consumers wanted. We want to know, their preferences. We want to know, and ultimately, as we've seen Amazon attempt to predict when they're going to purchase, so on and so forth. And what that is all about is predictive supply chain analytics. And the company that I'm working with right now, Grand Canal Solutions, is focusing on predictive supply chain analytics. Right now, it's pretty much focused on transportation logistics. So if we take a quick look at what's going on in today's supply chain, there are a number of limitations. Companies like Amazon really do have a leg up on many of the stakeholders in the supply chain, primarily because they're operating nearly end-to-end, starting from consumer demand all the way through delivery. Traditionally, what we're seeing in the supply chain world, notwithstanding a lot of the innovation that's gone on, transportation logistics is fundamentally a very archaic operation these days. We do have some great solutions out there, but fundamentally what we see is we have ERP and order management systems, we have carrier data, we have warehouse management systems, we have transportation management systems, and fundamentally, as Lisa mentioned earlier, as in the marketing world, there are silos here. These systems don't always talk to one another. So for example, your order management system may have difficulty talking to the warehouse management system in some cases. Now there's interfaces that have been built, and oftentimes these may not be the most cost effective, and they may not work exactly like you would like them to. In other cases, we see carrier data not really operating interactively with a transportation management system. Transportation management system being the system that's going to dictate exactly how a package gets to a consumer. And of course, much of this has been over the historical carriers. So you're talking about, there's interfaces, with UPS, FedEx, LTL, but how many of these systems are interfacing with companies like UberRush, with Deliv? These are the omni-channel kind of delivery companies, and they're just not present today in the supply chain transportation aspect. What we're talking about earlier was big data, and big data applies across all stakeholders in the supply chain. So one of the things that Grand Canal Solutions is doing is building what is called the Optimized Predictive Analytics Cloud. And in this case, what happens is the data from all these disparate systems is normalized, and it is resident in a data repository that you can use across all these systems. So in essence, it makes the walls disappear. The next step from that is being able to move data both ways. Oftentimes, we have one-way movement of data in today's interfaces. We will move data both ways. And ultimately, that will give way to what we call a dynamic optimization. So at any point in time, we know exactly the best way to operate our process based on whether it's consumer demand, where carriers have capacity, where a customer changes their preferences. And in this way, we enable what we call an intelligent supply chain. Now, bolted, this view here is by and large sort of the transportation logistics side, but you push it out on either side, all the way back to the factory, all the way to the consumer, including returns and so on. And this enables us to provide a much better level of service at a much lower cost in the future. We're not there today. There's a lot of talk about it. There's little niches in the marketplace where people are doing some of this, but there remains to be a lot of work. But this is the foundation of what we believe to be the future of the intelligent supply chain. So that's just a quick introduction. And what I'd like to do now is to pass this over to Nagesh. And
all right.
Let's see, go on. Here you go.
Good afternoon, folks. So basically, we've heard the word innovation so many times between the morning and till Mike's presentation. So this quick introduction on how to innovate, how to manage innovation, how to bring about the atmosphere of innovation, where to innovate, how to innovate, at what time, and at what cost. So those are the things that we will talk about in this quick presentation, and we'll also have a Q&A after this to clarify some of those questions, and I'll be available after this meeting and in the evening and tomorrow if you need any more clarifications. So basically, these three words, we've heard innovation, invention, and intellectual property. So innovation is basically the process of taking an idea from the mind of your employees or your founders to market. So a series of inventions towards a marketable product is the process of innovation. And what is an invention? Invention is basically solving a specific technical problem. That's what an invention is. And discovery of something new, but this happens a little more rare in nowadays. So basically, where science has progressed is we take what has already been invented and add on to it in specific vertical areas to make it useful, unique, and marketable to that product line. And intellectual property is basically an exclusive right on the inventions. So that is granted through patents and trademarks and trade secrets. So that's the IP that comes from the inventions. That's what the intellectual property gives you, the right to practice your invention. So here are the trends within the supply chain and logistics industry that we have seen. It's grouped into three groups right here, but you're seeing a lot of inventions and innovation going on in the last mile. Basically, carriers are working with each other to bring up their best-in-class, say USPS, which does excellent in the last mile segment, and where UPS does pretty good in the long haul. And we have services which are using both the best practices of the two carriers in the SurePost, and obviously FedEx has a similar product too. embedding environmental sensors for routing and dynamic delivery, like for example, cold chain. So it's going through Texas, and then you find out that the temperature of the product has gone above a certain level, to automatically then dynamically route it to the airport and have it flown so that the product does not lose its validity while it's traveling through. So technology that's associated with those things. You heard of Internet of Things. So IoT is getting into the supply chain where these sensors are placed on mobile assets, where it's collecting information about the environmental parameters and making decisions on the traveling of that particular package from the source to the destination. On-demand e-commerce, which is facilitating dynamic routing, real-time visibility, and cloud computing. So you've heard of these things. So these are the innovation buckets that we're seeing within the supply chain industry. And there's a data-driven, methodic way of looking at these inventions. This is publicly available information. There's 90 million records available worldwide on where these innovation is going on. So a method to look at that and predict, as well as help companies do the innovation in the right area at the right time, is what is possible nowadays with the amount of data that's available. This whole idea of the millennium generation that's using smartphones, mobile computing, the whole issue about, we heard about virtual reality this morning, the human-machine interface, which is changing right now. It's not the original mouse and screen. It's going to the next stage of human-machine interfaces into these programs and computing equipment. Social networking, triggered marketing. These are some new methods that we are seeing in the invention. So these groups that I'm talking about right now is basically where we are seeing innovation happen. And the way we do that is through publicly available databases where people apply for patents, so we can gauge where companies are innovating. On the same note, we can also see where companies are not innovating, to see white space. And this is where we can now talk about why should not a company which is innovating in one area not work in the white spaces. So defining the white spaces is another way of finding out where to innovate. And then we also heard about the drones, the driverless trucks, and so there's a lot of innovation going on in those aspects of the Uber model for delivery, then the smart kiosk, and we have a couple of companies that are pretty active in that area right now. So again, pardon me for the font over here, but what's more important to see over here is the hockey stick increase in inventions in drones. Like in 2004-05, there was absolutely nothing going on. There was some research going on in the military unmanned spacecraft. Of course, military research is not patented most of the times, but then you can see a sudden increase and the number of companies that are innovating within the drone space. So these are indications which we can look at publicly available information and come up with a theory on who's inventing and how they're inventing. Then the inventions, the Internet of Things, we see that that's a hot space. So using this, so the question is, people say that you should be innovative, you should invent, you should be an innovative company. It's not very easy. So you need a very structured, methodic way of looking at things to make sure that innovation happens within your company. So a methodic, data-driven strategic IP analysis, what would give you is a method of identifying white space. It rapidly identifies new application areas. So you might be working in one area, but then there'll be a slight delta difference between that and allow you to innovate very quickly within new application areas. Recognize your organization to devise new IP programs. It'll identify where the technology advancement is happening. You can get it by products, you can look at marketing data, but looking at IP data also gives you one more perspective of where technology advancements are happening, where can you as a company complement those IP enhancements that are happening, so you can start a brand new product line if need be, and define how to protect yourself which happens to be the main idea behind intellectual property. But then that's not the only one. Protection is not the only one. It is ability to move and innovate in new areas in a definable way. And then give you a method to invent in front of technology. So you're not lagging behind in innovating, you're inventing forward based on where your company is functioning. Thank you.